topic is we foresee that on several aspects of the infrastructures, we can see there is a pressure. There is fewer space sometimes in the data centers. We see the vendors, typically the CPU vendors, are increasing the CPU count on the systems. And the price of electricity is ramping up a lot. And we foresee there is a huge trend to go to densify our infrastructure. And the question about the roundtable, and I will ask almost the same question, but it has to be interactive. How do you foresee in your different companies? Because here we have several people with different point of view. What's your point of view of how will you manage this densification or not of your infrastructure within the next 2 years? What is your perspective around this topic? So it could be around power, it could be around CPU cross density, it could be space, it could be anything. Maybe we can start with Paul, if you like, if you feel comfortable, or.
Okay, I'll start. So, yeah, very interesting topic. Densification. Our footprint is quite different because we have some co-location sites that are in very remote location, and I mentioned before we have some rack with max 4 kilowatts of power budget, super low, and we already face this issue like with the latest Genoa server. Like we have some rack, we put like 15 machines, and we just over the power budget of the rack. And as you can imagine, this rack has top of rack switches, 48 ports. We have like a pair of them plus the management switches. And just for 15 server, I mean the TCO for build out is like a little bit dramatic per server. So that's already a big issue that we are facing right now in our cost modeling for bare metal. And also the other side of the densification is when we have our own facilities. Like you show on the lab, it's all retrofitted room. We have also more room like this that we life cycle that we want to upgrade, and the square meter is fixed. It's impossible to push the wall. It's possible to do work to upgrade the power, to add more UPS, upgrade the power distribution, upgrade the cooling, even though we soon reach the limit. In our case, our cooling in our site is max 15 kilowatt per rack. Otherwise, we run with a hotspot or we are out of spec of the crack unit. But in any case, densification is very important because we cannot push the wall, we can upgrade the infrastructure. So being more dense, more server per square meter is definitely something that will help us because in some cases we don't have the choice. Although building new sites or expanding our building, which is often not possible. So that's a very big concern in our case. I think that also the form factor question is very interesting. Like in small sites, just keeping one U machine. If we can just rack 15 of them, what's the point of keeping the one U form factor? Maybe we can have 2U or even like 2U 2 node, even though it's like the same, but in terms of efficiency, it could be better. Things like that could be interesting, and that also where this DCMHS could make sense because if we have like common motherboard but on different form factor, it's less overhead in terms of operation, but still we can optimize site per site. Yeah, that could be, I think, the interesting take. Yeah. So.
Yeah, densification is one need to optimize the power consumption. But it's mostly true for workloads that are CPU bound. If you are just using storage, you don't care about CPU. The CPU, the disk will spin, and it will just consume every time the same element. So you can do densification on the drives, but then it will depend on how you access it and many stuff like that. So most of the compute, when it's needed by HPC workload, so CPU intensive, the price per watt, it's very important in the TCO. When you have other kind of workloads, it depends. So then it's Yeah, it's a kind of one size fits all does not work. We say it many times. We need tailor-made solutions for one type of usage. And,
But typically, in the other hand, the CPU queues are getting bigger and bigger. And so if you want a very small set of cores, you don't have much product to select. So how do you deal with that?
yeah, and it's also when you increase the number of cores or the densification, you also increase the number of NUMA nodes, and then you increase the complexity to use them really efficiently. Many times I had the vendors that provides benchmarks that say, hey, this one is 20% better than the previous generation. We try, okay, it's true. We provide the machine to the business application. They say, no, I don't see any difference. Because we needed developers to do some changes. Then these changes needed to be integrated by the support team. And then the hardware team needed to fix many elements. It also increased a lot of complexity in terms of using it right.
Well, we are more focused on HPC. So for us, densification is mostly a thing that we like, mostly for HPC reason. The price per watt, the power efficiency for HPC is very nice. What you say about NUMA and the complexity of the hardware is very true. We already saw a few prospects who want to use only 64 cores from a 96 core CPU because it's the right trade-off with the memory bandwidth and the caches. So overall densification, sometimes it's a bit too much because if those CPUs only had 64 cores with the same memory bandwidth, it would cost us less, and it would be the same for the end customer. So I fully rejoin you on this. Another thing that we like about densification is is the floor space. As I explained, we usually deploy in existing facilities, and the space is sometimes very constrained. So if we can put more watts on the same floor space, it's very interesting for us. But now it provides many challenges, and in particular for us, the custom cooling, being able to dissipate more watts in the same small units is an engineering challenge. If we manage to do that, then it's great, but there are some risks that we may not be able to do it.
Yeah. From my perspective, like I said earlier, the density, we are looking at the density and densification more at the rack level, and I would say ideally at the room level if possible, so we can play with the design of the rack from a room perspective rather than a rack perspective. It's not always possible, of course, but still it's a good point in my opinion. So like as I answered earlier, I think being able to raise the power cap of every single rack, as long as we can put as many servers as possible in the rack, that's something that we will work on in the next few months. Of course, someone mentioned TCO earlier today, or cost effectiveness. That's one of the points we will always have because we have to. So that's really the goal. Yeah, really. And again, because of our business, because of our product, depending on one product or another. You mentioned storage, it's a specific case as well, but putting more cores will never be a solution for us. Again, because of the workload and this kind of consideration, but that's not a perfect solution. It might be a good solution for part of our business, never for all.
You mentioned densification at the rack level, and at Criteo, in some ways, we already have densified at the rack level enough that many of our racks can't be full anymore. So, of course, we are already working on lifting those constraints, and just like Erwan said, like everyone, we are looking at the CPUs that are being released, and we look at all the various CPUs in a given generation. And if we look at our current constraints or past constraints, we can only access a third or a fourth of the available choices. So we know in order to be access more of those CPU choices that might have better trade-offs, we need to densify more. So we are working on lifting the constraints at the rack level. And we have some advantages with our internal customers. Many of our workloads are scale out and fully stateless, or can work almost fully stateless. So in this case, putting more applications on a single server is something that can work for us. But it's not the case for all our workloads. Some depend on storage, some depend on I/O. So yeah, it depends on the use case. You mentioned before the risk management. That's very true. It's something that we also already have today. We need a certain number of servers in a colocation. Otherwise, if server starts failing, we can't easily have access to spares and replace them quickly. And it will only be more true and truer as we densify. We also need to consider the scale, and we need to have enough scale in order to be able to survive one or two or even more servers that fail and be able to repair them in a short time frame.
Do you know if your applications are ready to support this densification? I mean,
Let me give you this one, but come here because.
So yes, so we spoke about the hardware part of it. We can densify the systems at some level because of the rack limits, because of our environment. But once you have reached the densification, do you know if your application will be able to leverage this densification you have provided? Because typically in our case, we can put much more cores, but can our customers follow these trends? And what's your position with that? Have you spoke with your internal customers? What's your point of view for the readiness of application to leverage this densification? Maybe back to Paul.
That's interesting intake. In our case, basically the bulk of the end application we have, when we talk about scale-out workload, is a game server, and the metric is peak CCU, so concurrent user. And basically this can scale to different number of nodes. So at the end, we just provide a number of core that it match to a number of CCU, like depending on game, you can put more CCU or less CCU per core. And they don't care if it's all fit in one single 64-core CPU or multiple 8-core. And actually, it's quite interesting because I recently done some TCO comparison. In this case, on the game server, the clock speed is very important. So it's what they look at. When you look at densification of CPU, of course, bigger number of cores, the lower is the clock. It's always a trade-off. And in that case, it's quite interesting because like we have some 8-core CPUs that just use 65 watt. Very impressive. And basically, it's much more better TCO to have like 4 8-core machine rather than one 32-core. In that case. So it's quite interesting because in our case, densification, we are kind of going opposite of densification. It's like spreading a lot of small machines instead of consolidating in one big host. So that's an area that we are exploring. So maybe that's something that will be kind of different. And also even we could say we can waste space because we have 4 servers instead of 1. But anyway, we are rack budget constrained. We have a lot of space left in the rack, so At the end of the day, it's the same. So it's like kind of opposite. So it's more host to manage. So that get back to the topic of having more automation and more easier operation. But yeah, that's just to add a different perspective on the densification.
Yeah, and also when you densify, when you add more cores, depending on the workload and also on the time of day and the neighbors and many factors, you will see new issues that will arise only during the last 20% usage. For example, on the NUMA is when you have one network card, it will be on one PCI slot, which is bound only on one CPU. If your application is working on the second one, it will have to do many NUMA remote access to share or just to access the network. And when the both CPU are just in the middle usage, it's okay. But when you are starting to rise again, the pressure on one CPU, the other one will also decrease in efficiency. So it's always the same thing, less application, simpler elements. It's working great as long as you're not CPU bound.
Actually, on this specific case, we looked into this, and there are network cards on the market that support multiple multi-socket configurations. Some, if you attach them through PCI, some have a second PCI connector, a mini riser, if you wish, a small card that you plug in to another port that will be connected to the other CPU. And the OCP V3 connector supports having multiple lanes from different CPUs. So if the motherboard is designed for it, you can have different interrupts, for example, going to different CPUs. So yeah. There exist solutions for that, but it's still a bit of a niche right now.
For us, we are ready for everything, I would say, just because the more servers we put in a rack, the better. And with regard to our customer ready for more density at the server level, yes, if we do consider there is a product, there is a need or a demand for this kind of higher density, that's something we can consider. Again, since we are not the end customer, it's easier. I mean, well, more server is more money, I would say, so for us at least. So no, it's really different perspective. It might look pragmatic, but that's the case, right? And if we have many customers asking for more cores or more frequency, that for us, that will be a new product. So we see it differently.
Yes, for our customers' applications, we mainly have three types of applications. We'll have banking. They do Monte Carlo simulations. So basically, they want a total complete number of cores. And as Paul said, they really don't care if it's one CPU or 1,000 CPUs. So they are ready, but they don't mind. Then we have 3D rendering. I'm not entirely sure about the performance of rendering systems on very high core counts, but I would say that it's quite perfectly parallel. So I think the performance is fine. And for 3D rendering, usually you'll have someone who wants to render maybe 10,000 images on 100 CPUs or something. So if they have 100 CPUs that go very fast, or 200 that go a bit less fast, in the end, the throughput would be the same. So I think for this application of 3D rendering, they are ready, but they also don't really care. HPC numerical simulation is another game. I think they are very much interested because they also usually want a cluster of, say, 1,000 cores. And if it's on 4 machines, it's much better than if it's on 16 machines because 4 machines means much less network communication, so much better performance. But as I said before, core count is not the only thing they're going to look at. They'll have other bottlenecks like memory bandwidth. So they are happy on densification, but it must happen on many directions at the same time. And same thing for network communication. You'll have less, but you still need higher bandwidth between machines with 128 cores than between machines with 8 cores.
And also for the 3D rendering and any kind of bridge cell, you also have, when you integrate the TCO, you have the licensing cost when you run on sockets, and it costs a lot.
Yes, exactly, and that's also very much true for CFD, maybe even more because the CFD software's licensing systems are even weirder than in 3D, I guess. So sometimes it's in the number of cores, so then either you don't really care, or you are in the situation where you use 64 cores on a 96 core machines, you pay for 96 and you use 64, it's bad. Sometimes it's licensed by the node, and then it's better to have very big nodes. But I think that the license by the node vendors, software vendors, are starting to see that they are being played. So they're getting back from it. So I don't think it will last a lot longer.
There's a kind of an elephant in the room, a type of server that's eating a lot of power, from 8 to 10 kilowatts, and it's kind of trending right now. It's the one where you have multiple GPU accelerators for training. Are any of you, do any of you have actual experience running that in production for multiple clusters or things like that?
So in our case, the GPU usage is like a little bit specific. We are not tied to the very recent AI booming market. The GPU is more on what we call the build farm. So a little bit what you said, like 3D rendering, but in the build pipeline, when actually making a game, there is a continuous releasing system, and it needs to use a build farm. And it's mainly RTX card, so it's not the big machine learning AI GPU, it's just RTX. And they don't use the GPU on all the build pipeline. They just need to call some tooling in the pipeline. Maybe sometimes they even have to call After Effects, Houdini, some specific tool on the pipeline that record the GPU. So the GPU needs to be always here on demand, because you can never know when it will be needed on the pipeline. But when the pipeline needed, it needs to be there. So the usage of the GPU is very spiky. We have like rack full of build machine with RTX card, and basically we see that the average is not that big. So indeed we don't see that much constraint.
Maybe a question for the audience. Do you have a lot of GPUs? Do you use them or not at all? Mostly CPU? It's mostly CPU, I guess. Maybe a few AI, ML usage? Not fashion tech, okay.
I think it's over. Thank you. Thank you all for participating in this roundtable. We will have a couple of closing words, and then we will have a cocktail. Thank you. Thank you all. Ah, non. Sorry. Hop. Oops. No. 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 Le spoil. It's okay. what a lag. Okay, hold on. Yeah, green stick. So, we are here. Woo! Cocktail. Now, just before that, a couple of closing words. Obviously, thanks. Thank you all for this amazing first edition. I mean, it's crazy to see all of you. We have been able to set up this in a very short time. It took less than 3 months to set up all this with all these sponsors. And seriously, thank you all. Thank you, sponsors, to have been very prompt to react. Thank you, Stefan, for being very supportive here. We did it together. It was I sold him this crazy project 8 months ago, and 3 months ago he kicked me back and said, no, we have to do it. And we did it, and he was a very good teammate at setting this up. So thank you. And thank you also, Sigolene, backstage, for all the organization. I'm very happy to see that we had so many interactions. That was the goal of this conference, and I'm very happy to see it happened. It happened during the talks, it happened during the questions, it happened also during the pauses. And everyone was very keen to play this game, to be open, to share, even if we don't have the same businesses. Even sometimes if you are competitors, it's fine. Everyone were here to share. And this is very nice to see that, to see you are ready to go in this direction. And for me, at least, the achievements are perfectly unlocked. I mean, we have been, it's what PremDay is about, and thank you for following us in this story. So what's next? This edition is over, sadly, even if we have a cocktail. There was a question, is how to continue that? What's next after this first edition? To be honest, this first edition was just a bootstrap. The project, there is another way to continue that. We did it, the two of us, we decided to set up this conference, to bootstrap it. But it's kind of chicken and eggs question. We decided to do it ourselves, kind of in a submarine mode. We decided to go very fast, straight to the point. But there is a larger project around that. We saw during these days there is a lot of discussions. There is great common points between infra owners. We have, even if we didn't share the presentation before, we see at least 3 or 4 presentations that were almost saying the same thing. In that particular context, and what we had here also during the roundtable, we see people that are eager to share, eager to go in the same direction. And the question is, why not starting up a user group of infra owners that share their experience all together? And this idea came from Mathieu. Thank you, Mathieu, for supporting this idea. Let's create a user group of all the infra owners here in the room, probably outside of the room, but with one main goal, which is, the first one is sharing all together. We sometimes feel a bit isolated about topics, and when we saw the presentation, we say, hey, I have the same issues. So let's first share together our own knowledge and experience, because we have a lot to learn. Some are more advanced in open firmware, nice, let's take their feedback. Some are more advanced in some tooling, let's take their feedback. Some are doing some very cool cleaning this technology, let's use it. And let's try to first create this community of users to break the silos between all these infrastructures. And then it could be also a great platform for the vendors. If we are able as owners to unify, kind of, to share and to represent for the vendors a point of contact where they can directly access the engineers, the ones that have the knowledge of what is working or not working on their infra, That probably also helps the vendors to get a better feedback. It's very difficult, from my opinion, from their point of view, to get a very quick overview of what is working or not working, what is expected or not. This conference was about trying to do so, but the feeling is this conference should be probably the communication vector of this user group. And we have to offload what we bootstrap, the two of us, to this user group, and this user group representing the infra owners and using this conference as a communication vector to the vendors. It's a proposal. If you agree on this vision, feel free first to join us on the PremDay Slack channel. And thank you, SFC, for hosting the channel. Thank you for helping us on that front. Join us on this channel. I don't know what the user group will be about, but let's discuss it over there. You will avoid tons of emails. It will be easier to get in contact. So if you are an infra owner and if you feel that this project could be useful for you, join us on PremDay and see you there to find out what we will create. And it's up to all of us to make it happen. Maybe, Stéphane, you want to make a last word before we share a drink?
Yeah, just one word, just to say again, thank you again to the speakers as well, to play the game, to have some trust in the proposal we made. Johan, Paul, Anis, Adrien. It was great to have this discussion, and just the meeting we had every Tuesday almost for the last few months was very interesting to just again give credit to the proposal, and so thank you.
So I hope you enjoyed this day and this new concept, because it's pretty special. I mean, asking vendors to sponsor as a conference they are not speaking in, they are not preparing anything for, they just have to sit back and listen. It's pretty strange actually to do so, but it worked. I think they enjoyed, I hope so, but it's really a new concept of conference, so I hope all of us enjoyed that. I promise I will no more be between you and the cocktail from now. And let's continue the discussion around a drink and see you maybe for another edition. Bye.
Thank you.